voice. I am your voice.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys like the stream down below, subscribe if you're new. Let's get to 50 likes, let's get to 100 before we officially begin, but we have a lot of people that are pouring in. We have a lot to really talk about, and we're going to be covering all of this and more between Donald Trump and his passing of the big beautiful bill, or trying to get it passed into law. Still hasn't even passed through the House, but it has cleared the first threshold. But you do have a lot of holdovers over very minuscule things, and it's like people need to just come together and get it done. Like, that's the main takeaway that people should be having from that. But on top of it, we have some other miscellaneous news. I'm sure everybody's heard about the Biden situation as well. I'm sure some people want to bring that into the mix, and definitely we'll be talking to we'll be talking about some other things that were passed through. So again, make sure you guys like the stream before the face cam can go on. We're only at 60. We got to get to 100 before we begin. Seems like not a lot of people are using live chat. And again, if you guys have any questions that you want answered during the show, feel free to send them in via Super Chat, and I will answer them. But what we do know is that they did pass the no tax on tips part of it unanimously through the Senate, and we'll be covering that as well. So anyways, let's get to 70, guys. You guys got to get to 100 if you want the show to begin. That's typically how these things go. I guess we didn't really get that many in the pre-show, but people are pouring in now, which is important. So we're at 71. We got to get to 80. Then we got to get to 90. Then we got to get to 100. But you've got just a lot of stuff to talk about. It's been a while for sure. It's been a while. So, we haven't gone live in about 10, 11 days. And then you have Donald Trump going and getting all these $1 trillion worth of deals over in what we're seeing in the Middle East. And then now we have the approval rating just surged because of the intermediate deal with China. And all of this was just absolutely just monumental in terms of changing the energy, because it seemed like when you had the tariffs and the rates were very high very quickly, a lot of people were being a little bit agitated. But now we see the tides turn. Now we see his approval rating inching closer and closer to 50%, and this is after probably I would say the worst media cycle, just based on how much negative coverage that he's been getting. But still, it doesn't matter, because he is more approved of now at any point than he was during his first term on Real Clear Politics in the polling aggregate, and it's only getting better from here, it seems. And we're going to cover it. But guys, 10 more likes. We got 200 people. We got 90 likes. We got to get to 100. That's when the stream can actually begin. So it takes 10 people to do it. But we'll be getting to the Super Chats later on. Once again, if you guys have any Super Chats to send in, any questions, concerns, comments for the channel, any takes, feel free to send them in via Super Chat. You guys know how to do it, the Super Chat function. So we are at 100, and the stream can officially begin, because Donald Trump's approval rating, it is going up. Once again, it is going up significantly. You can look at this here. He was at a point where he's like at 45%. 45% in the approval rating. It's not even historically a bad approval rating, but for this term, that was the low point, and already out of the gate, you're seeing it start to do a 180, because things are getting done, and many more things are yet to get done for sure. But you're seeing, more importantly, the disapproval rating fall. It's below 50%. So his approval rating right now is essentially a jump ball. It's 50-50. And this was never the case in term one. This was never the case in the first term where he had this roaring economy. Now the economy not doing so well, but under Trump, it's gotten a little bit better. And I think a lot of it has been the main focus of reorienting our economic policy around the forgotten American instead of the foreign worker or the other countries of the world to take advantage of us. You're seeing a complete and total 180 between Donald Trump's economic policy and Joe Biden's economic policy. And to expand Donald Trump's economic policy that spurred growth, spurred revenue, you have to do that by essentially extending the tax cuts, because he put them in place in 2017. He's going to need to extend them in 2025 because that was the time frame for most of the income brackets in the tax cut, and they get extended permanently in what is known as the Big Beautiful Bill, which is something that he's called his latest bill. It's included things like no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, although no tax on tips was passed separately today, 100-0. That you don't really get a vote like that very much ever, but this is a policy that is just a political layup, so much so to the point where even Democrats just had to do it because obviously it's wildly popular, and Donald Trump gets to take all the credit for it. He gets to take all the credit. You work as some sort of waiter or a bartender or just any job in general, cab drivers, that includes tips. This was a key promise. There are probably a couple million people who voted for Donald Trump just because of this policy, and now it is very likely going to become part of law very soon, which is pretty amazing and would be definitely the very big change to the tax code that he would be able to add to his list of accomplishments that we know. But you can look at the Big Beautiful Bill and the status of it. That's a whole nother thing because it cleared a regulatory hurdle. You look at the fact that it passed through the House, or it is not fully passing through the House, but it passed through the House to the point where you would get a debate on committee to put it up to a floor vote. Now, you still have a lot of these people that are a little bit shaky on it. And that's just kind of a problem because you have so many people that want to go out there and they think it's electorally, I guess you would say, beneficial for Republicans to talk about cutting entitlements, cutting Medicaid, and, waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid is one thing. Something like if you want to opt out of Social Security, that's another thing. But when you're talking about just slashing the programs or cutting significant parts of the programs, you don't want to do that. Donald Trump has talked about this on the campaign trail. If Republicans want to get away from, the party of the elite, which they pretty much have at this point, but in so many people's eyes, like the Republican Party and Donald Trump are two different entities. And when it comes to an issue like Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid, Donald Trump has been very reluctant when it comes down to cutting these things compared to somebody like a Paul Ryan who wants to go out there and gut them completely. Ironically enough, Ryan helped run up the debt and deficit in Donald Trump's first term, which again is pretty ironic. People will blame the tax cuts for that. We've gone over this so many times. The revenues increased under Donald Trump's tax plan. From 2018 to 2019, you saw a bigger increase than any increase you saw during Obama's second term under the previous plan, to the point where it's like, yeah, this notion of tax cuts, it's a give and take because you cut the taxes, more spending, more investment, higher revenues. That's typically, how these things go. Obviously, it's on a curve. There's, a point where you'd say, okay, you're going to be, getting too much revenue at that point, and then there's going to be a point where you wouldn't be getting enough. Obviously, but still, Donald Trump's tax plan is relatively balanced on that front. The way you see this, the current brackets and their current rates at the position they're in. But you have these people that are grandstanding. You have these people, the Thomas Masseys of the world. They do it on principle. But the problem is they won't even put forth a bill to rival it, to highlight the problems. They just want to say no. They want to go on television. They want to do the whole routine. And they never get anything done. These are people that have voted with Biden on economic policy before, whether it's extending some of their spending bills. But when it comes down to Donald Trump, they just want to operate as somebody who can effectively stab his agenda in the back because something about it is not 100% perfect or whatever, because politics are not 100% perfect. Donald Trump goes out there and says these people don't understand how politics works. He's 100% right. Whether you agree with the bill in its entirety or you think that there's a little bit too much spending in it, whatever, that's typically how these things go. We've been spending like crazy over the past 20 years. Whether you're a fan of it or not is irrelevant. I think the main takeaway is you are lowering taxes. You're sustaining that. You're cutting taxes overall. There's a possibility that it would spur revenue, which is something that Donald Trump's first tax bill did. Spending was higher, but it was for other reasons, and COVID was the number one reason. But still, when you look at the economic impact of Trump's bill, you're talking about 4 million full-time jobs, according to the Council of Economic Advisors, 6,000 to 11,000 higher wages per worker. That's per worker per year. That's what we're talking about. Higher take-home pay, you're talking about $8,000 to $13,000, give or take. $100 billion worth of investment and 1 million plus jobs and hundreds of thousands of new homes to support workforce growth in distressed communities. You're talking about this essentially functioning as a stimulus that tends to cut people's taxes, and it possibly could lead to a lot of beneficial economic growth. I've heard reports of it could raise the GDP by 3 to 4% in and of itself. Like, this is what we're talking about here. Also, remittance taxes. You are pushing the tax burden onto non-citizens. You're pushing the tax burden onto other countries, essentially. A lot of other countries do remittance taxes. This essentially says, no, we're going to tax remittances. This has been something that's been proposed. Oh, if Trump does this, he can get Mexico to pay for the wall, essentially. Well, now it's going to be reality. Now you're going to have it, assuming it passes through. So there's plenty of positive things in this bill. It's a very comprehensive piece of legislation. It's very long, but it covers all bases, and it needs to get passed, because if it gets passed and you extend the tax cuts and you see better jobs numbers, more economic growth, etc., all of this, you're going to get the economy. You're adding the jet fuel into it you had in Trump's first term. You're going to get the economy roaring once again. It's like at that point, you're going to be in a much better position ahead of the midterms, because not only are you kind of cooling down the trade war stuff because you're getting some intermediary deals done with China, with the UK, with a lot of these other countries, you're getting a lot of investment from these Gulf states into the United States economy to the tune of trillions of dollars, and you're working to settle all of the conflicts abroad. It would be great to do business with Russia again. It would be great to get that conflict settled overall, and obviously we understand that one of the reasons why gas prices were so expensive under Biden's administration was because he cut off Russia completely. Now, I'd rather be energy independent. I would rather us have energy here in the United States. I don't want to have to rely as much on other countries, but the sad situation is that's kind of how these things are set up. But if we're able to get oil from Russia, instead of buying oil indirectly from Russia for the sake of vanity, like we were doing under Biden, who got it from Iran, Venezuela, all these other corrupt countries who are more adversarial than Russia, it's like now you can actually lower the gas prices, which is going to lower pretty much everything else. You're going to have more jobs. You're going to have a stronger economy. And if all of this happens, you're going to see Republicans in a very good shape. And this is the other thing, is House Republicans need to get their act together and make sure they can do it, because it only needs 51 votes in the Senate, because this is not one of the pieces of legislation that the filibuster applies to, because it's like it's kind of like the first tax plan. Trump didn't get 60 votes on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, nor did he need to. But when it comes to something like this, 50 votes, that's all you necessarily need to have it pass through. He has more than enough to do it in the Senate, but he needs it to pass the House. And you have all these factions. They're infighting. They're infighting about what percentage of like a SALT deduction. It's like, at least just deliver something. It doesn't have to be a ridiculously high thing. People like Mike Lawler are dying on that hill in New York. And then you have New Jersey representatives trying to do the same thing, because it is true that, the SALT deductions definitely would help out those states, but they want to increase it to the point where it'd be like maybe a little bit too high. And it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. These people need to get their act together, understand it's for the greater good of the country that you pass a bill, the best possible bill you can pass, so we can make sure that the economy can get roaring again and people can keep their low rates of taxes, lower taxes on seniors, lower taxes across the board. That's really what this comes down to. And if it's able to be implemented, if they're able to get their act together, you're talking about this approval rating being in the 50s, because we saw what the first tax cut that Donald Trump did in term one, what that was able to do to his approval rating. It took him from like 37% to like 42, 43. The midterms without that tax bill would have been far, far worse. So Republicans here have a political layup. It's called get your act together and then pass this bill. And if you're able to get your act together and you're able to pass this bill, what would that essentially do? It would give Donald Trump a major landmark policy victory out of the gate, because he would be able to get a lot done on not just day one, but basically year one of term two. And if he's able to do that, then you go into the midterms with a lot of momentum. But if you're unable to do this and you drop the ball on this and the tax cuts expire, that's going to look horribly on the Republicans. And at that point, we wouldn't be talking about a potential asterisk midterm. You'd be talking about a midterm year that would not exactly go the way that a lot of people would want it to go. And they kind of have to understand that there is the sense of urgency. You know, principle is great to have, but you have to be smart. You have to have a brain. You can't be somebody that says, well, you know, this spending's a little too high, but if you don't pass it, you know what's going to happen politically. You know that you're not going to be able to be ever in a situation to fix it. And of course, people are going to say, well, it's like kicking the can down the road. And it's like, yeah, I think that there are legitimate areas where we do need to cut. I don't think DOGE necessarily went far enough. All of that is true. But at this stage in the game, you have to do something, and you have to pass some piece of legislation that would essentially codify as much of Donald Trump's agenda as you possibly can. No, it's not going to be 100,000% perfect. I mean, let's be completely honest here. I don't think a single piece of legislation is going to be that perfect, especially a piece of legislation that's going to be this big. But still, you have a lot of stuff in there that is beneficial. If you could unite as a party and pass it, it would be wonderful. The left has never had this problem. You know, they might have one or two people in the Senate in Biden's term who didn't want to pass some of his agenda. But regardless, in the House, it was unanimous. Every single time the Democrats, they would get their act together, they would pass the legislation, and the House Republicans need to do the same. Because it seems like the Republicans in the Senate are willing to, take this bill and give it to Trump's desk. But as of right now in the House, you have a massive, massive problem with this division. So hopefully it can get settled. They've made massive strides. I think it's a wonderful thing that they've made these massive strides for sure. But in terms of the ability to get it out there and to pass it through, you got to act sooner than later, because people want to see things getting done. Donald Trump was a change candidate. He was a change president. That's what he was elected to be in 2016 and 2024. He was not elected to be a keep the status quo kind of guy. And even the popular parts of the status quo, which Donald Trump changed in 2016, might not have been the focal point of what separated him from a lot of other Republicans. But you're talking about the middle class tax cuts. If you let those expire, that's a change to the status quo that nobody wants. And it's a big portion of voters that would be left behind if that were to happen. So we'll see what happens, guys. We'll see what happens in terms of the tax plan, the big, beautiful bill. Will it be able to pass through the House? I think that there's a good chance, but I think that they're going to have to debate back and forth about it. But if it does happen, you're talking about Donald Trump's approval rating potentially skyrocketing. But on top of that, if you look at Donald Trump's approval, not only is it higher, but you have to look at the state of the country polls. And we talked about this in the last video, but these are actually doing relatively well. If you look at the direction of the country polls, they're showing that only 50% of the people in the country believe that it's on the wrong track, which you might sit back here and say, well, that's still, it's still in the negatives, but it's always been in the negatives. You have a lot of cynical people in this country. Myself, I don't even know if I would say that our country's completely been heading in the right direction for the past 20 years, even though we've had Trump in office. I'm not blaming him for that, but I'm just saying there's plenty of elements to society that have weakened over the past 20 years, let alone the past 50 or 60. But regardless, if you're going to look at this through like the binary of what is happening in our country, like is the economy doing better? Like obviously the economy was doing better under Trump the first time, and you did see polls start to reflect that, where it was like, 39% right direction, 53% wrong track, and that was when Trump was much less popular. Now, despite the economy not being perfect, I think a lot of people would look at it and say, yeah, but we're on the right track, and that's what matters. And when you look at this, there's a lot more liberal polls in here than there are in the Trump approval aggregate, but still -7, that's still historically good for the past 15 to 20 years, which may not be saying a whole lot about the past 15 to 20 years, but regardless, people are cynical. If the right direction's anywhere in like the 45 to 50% range, it's going to be not too good for the Democrats, especially as their favorable rating is in the gutter. Their favorable rating is just abysmal as a party. They're in the 30s on a good day. The Republicans, they're not perfect. They have infighting. It's a problem. They're incompetent. We all get it. They always know how to snatch defeat away from the jaws of victory. And we know that, but still, it's like 43% right direction, Trump's approval rating, high 40s, despite a very shaky, trade war media cycle. He's doing fine in both of those polling metrics. At that point, it's like, yeah, in some of these polls, it's like you have the insider advantage drops. He's at 55% approval. Now, it's a little bit of an outlier, but it's in line with other polling we've seen that shows him at 50, 52. Even if you want to say it's like in the high 40s, I think it's probably around even. Half the country approves, half the country disapproves, just like it was on November 5th. When Trump won roughly around 50% of the popular vote to Kamala Harris's 48.4 or something like that. I don't remember the exact end total, but it was roughly around there. And we're seeing the same exact thing. People's minds have not changed since the election, which is absolutely huge. And if it stays this way heading into 2026, then you're talking about asterisk midterm, Republicans gaining seats in the House, not losing them, gaining a seat or two in the Senate, picking off a few governorships. That's not a blue wave. It's more of a red wave than a blue wave. I wouldn't say it's a red wave, just like I wouldn't say 2022 was a blue wave, but definitely unlike 2022, 2026 has the possibility to actually be some sort of asterisk midterm, and we'll wait and see. But if you could turn out your base and energize your base by getting things done, done that are important, and if he's able to go out there and do that, we're going to be in a much better position overall as a country, but also as a political movement, political party, whatever you want to call it, heading into 2026, heading into 2028. So you can not just keep winning for the next 4 years, but the next 8, 12, 16. It's called building a dynasty. You saw the Democrats do this in the 1930s, 1940s. They never relinquished the White House from 32 to 52. Could you see the opposite this time around? Well, the only way you're going to do that is if you get things done and people like what you're getting done. This bill is very popular on the surface level. The political class does not fully, I guess you would say, resonate with the average Trump voter, in part because of it. You have these people that go up there and they grandstand and do X, Y, and Z instead of actually trying to deliver the victories to the people that elected them. And that's pretty much it. Donald Trump tries. He's only one man. It's a system. But hopefully he's able to get things done. You have all parts of the system, even the parts of the system that claim, oh no, they're the real, true, principled conservatives. They're always the ones that'll find some weird reason to make the perfect the enemy of the good. And when you do that, you lose every single time. So that's really the monologue I have for tonight. We can get to the super chats. We don't have very many of them, but we could start off here. Tom Otto for 5 says we still need to cut more bloat, not entitlements, but also raise tax revenue on liberal elites in New York and California. by ending deductions. Well, they're going to expand those deductions for better or worse, mainly because of the fact that Republicans have been doing better in New Jersey. They've been doing better in New York. Donald Trump wants to capitalize on that by, reintroducing them, because the first tax plan that Trump got and signed into law severely reduced the SALT deductions. This one, he wants to add them back in a more moderate fashion, which will allow there to be deductions. But I don't know, in terms of these upper income brackets, Trump says that possibly he could look at, if there is a reasonable slight increase, he would be down. If it was a ridiculous increase, you're going to see companies leaving. I don't think he wants that. I think he wants what's good for the economy, balancing what's good for Wall Street and Main Street, make them work together. That's kind of how you have the economy firing on all cylinders. And that's what we saw in like 2019. And that's what we need to get back right now. So there's that. But in terms of the next super chat, we have John for 5. Says, Trump voter here recently lost job working in imports due to our main customer slowing down orders due to tariff uncertainty. Thoughts? Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Definitely, it's not something that people want to happen. But in terms of the uncertainty, hopefully it'll get settled sooner than later. But like I said, when it comes to tariffs, you're not going to make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. You obviously don't want to be one of those few eggs that's being broken. I understand that. But what he's trying to do to the economy is he's trying to use these tariffs as a negotiating tool so he's able to get other countries to come to the table. And that's really it. So there's going to be uncertainty, hopefully less uncertainty now than there was back then. Definitely, I feel like Donald Trump coming out hot saying, no, we're going to do all these tariffs on all these countries. It's going to lead to panic. But mainly what he's doing and the way he's seeing it is like, okay, we're going to have panic from these other countries, and then they're going to come to the table. It's going to be, a fairer deal. We're not going to be getting the raw end of these deals at the level we are currently. So again, hopefully everything gets settled out sooner than later. I think that the new tariff rate is much better than the old tariff rate. So I'll leave it at that, because I think 145 would not be sustainable, and you would have a lot of losses if that was going to be the case. So Patricia, Riddle for 10 says, love your channel. Well, I appreciate it. Seeking Finding for 10 says, being lied to on no tax on Social Security is a game ender for me. I won't be voting in 26. In fact, all my political giving to Republican campaigns has ended. Promise made, promise broken. No tax means no tax. Well, are you referring the no tax on Social Security in the bill? Because I'm okay. Let me see this. Let me see this for a second. No taxes on Social Security in the big beautiful bill. Because hopefully, because Trump did say that he was going to get that done. I assume it'd be a part of the bill. Or are they going to try to pass it in addition to the bill? Because if it doesn't include the provision, it includes a deduction, which again is not entirely the initial thing. So yeah, that's tough. That's tough for sure. This is the first time I'm finding out about that. But it does offer the $4,000 deduction, which again is a little bit iffy. It might actually help some people more, I guess you would say, in that realm, depending on how much they're getting back. But yeah, I'd look and I'd try to get them to pass something else on a separate bill. Okay, somebody said the Byrd rule prevents the Social Security no tax, has to be done via separate bill. Okay. Well, that makes sense. So if that's the case, I don't think it really matters if it's in the big, beautiful bill, so long as they're able to pass a separate bill. Because if they're not able to put it in the bill, because there is the Byrd rule, which does complicate the passage, or it does complicate the passage via the budget reconciliation, that's going to be something that could be tough to pass. But still, they are definitely putting in the deduction for $4,000, which I guess it's a consolation prize, but hopefully they're going to be able to pass an additional bill, just like they did for no taxes on tips. So they did pass that because they couldn't put that in the bill either. It was, the bill was initially supposed to have all this stuff. Turns out that people like to complicate everything because of precedents or whatever. And then on top of it, they're going to be passing all these other bills. They passed the bill for no tax on tips. Hopefully they pass the bill for no tax on Social Security. If not, people are going to have to deal with the deduction. And I don't think that Trump would be very happy if the House Republicans didn't follow through on the agenda. And I don't think the voters would be either, for the record. But I think that passing this bill, because if you can't fit that into this bill, passing this bill for the meantime is going to be the most important thing that they're going to have to go out there and get done. So American Nerd 1776 says, Chris Van Hollen to Rubio, I have to tell you directly and personally, I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. Rubio says, well, first of all, you regret voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job. Well, that's absolutely the right thing to say. Marco Rubio's been doing a very good job lately. And on top of it, the guy that is in question here, Van Hollen, he's the same guy who flew to El Salvador to just simp for this, alleged gang member who's not a United States citizen. He's a citizen of El Salvador, is in the United States, is not necessarily like a legal resident, like he did file for like asylum, but he is not like even somebody that has like a green card. And he was caught with several people who were members of MS-13. He has tattoos on his knuckles that resemble emojis and things like that would kind of hint at the fact that he's a part of MS-13. And we're told that this guy's like the civil rights hero of our time. And the Democrats think it's a good idea to fly all the way to El Salvador to try and bring this guy back. And it's like this whole due process thing. I understand you have to have due process, but who is due process written for? If you have millions of people that pour into this country illegally, and these people do not come in through a due process, and we don't know who they are. I'm not talking necessarily about this guy, but you have so many people, it's like, oh no, they have to wait for their trials, and they happen 2 years down the line, and they're able to walk and roam around free until then. Folks, it's ridiculous. It's a broken system. Just send them back. Okay, due process, we've seen it suspended under Abraham Lincoln, who many people would agree was a great leader, a great president, because he had to do it because it was in a wartime situation. And this is no different because you have an invasion on American soil. People don't see it that way as like a war invasion, but in reality, that's what it is. You have millions of people pouring in. You don't know who these people are. There's a lot less of them now because Donald Trump is in the White House and border crossings have gone down like 99%, and that's a very good thing. But regardless, you have all these people that have poured into the United States illegally. You have to remove them. You can't have them waiting around years for a judge. So you could say we need more judges. We need to speed up the process. That's fine. But some of these people, if they're proven not to have any sort of papers and they just can't go through the system and win by any means, they just need to be removed because they're here illegally. Just send them back to their home countries. Do what you got to do. A lot of them will self-deport as well. In fact, people will say, well, deportation numbers aren't super high. And I think they should be higher. And I'm not here to argue about that, but I will say that, your deportations are going to be higher under Biden when you have millions of people crossing within a year. People that get turned away at the border, those people count as a deportation. There's nobody coming through the border to be turned away at the border under Donald Trump, which is a massive step in the right direction on that front. So you have that, but on top of it, you have the... what am I trying to say here? You have these people who are here illegally for several years and they don't have papers. They need to go back. And in order to do that, you're going to need to not necessarily have them wait for several years, but also you're going to need to scare these people into going back. And the way you do that is when you have a media, which is ironically helping us in this case, because they're saying Trump is horrible, he's a dictator, he's treating these people so poorly. It's like then they just want to get out of the country because people, it's just in their human nature. They don't like to be controlled. If they know they're going to be sent back, they'll just go on their own. And you're seeing that because how do you have all these jobs disappearing from workers that are just disappearing? These foreign-born workers, you saw them get all the jobs under Biden. They didn't get any new jobs for native-born Americans, but now that's where the jobs are being created. Whereas the foreign-born workers, they're in the gutter. They were saying, no, it's retirements, it's the age pyramid, all this stuff. And it's like, no, these are people that are checking out of the workforce because they just, they're tired. They're tired of being in the workforce because they can't get a job. So they step away from it. And now they're stepping back in. And then you see these people who are here illegally, just leaving, going home. Those jobs numbers are basically, if you look into them, deportation numbers, self-deportation numbers, and they're by the hundreds of thousands of people that have just decided to leave the country, or these jobs just have ceased to exist, and they're all magically for foreign-born workers, many of whom are non-citizens. So that's how it works. But you have a lot of people who are here illegally that need to go, and that's a whole nother thing. But you have this guy, as the super chatter put in there, Van Hollen, who's the senator. He just doesn't understand that. So anyways, guys, we got to be doing better on the super chat front. I don't know if it's because I didn't set a goal for this stream, but we will set a goal. We will set a goal now because apparently nobody likes to super chat until they see a goal. But we will set a goal for this super chat. We'll set the goal at 15 super chats, any color, 2 and above. So there we go. That way we can get the audience engaged a little bit so we can hit the goal. Because people like hitting the goal. They like sending it to hit the goal. But in terms of when you don't have a goal, sometimes it takes a little bit to get off the ground. So we'll see what we can do. But we'll probably start going, I think the next live stream we're going to do it a little bit earlier. We're going to do it on Sunday. And we're going to do call-ins for the first time in a long time because we have not done a call-in show in probably a year or maybe a little bit less than that. But it definitely was before the election. And I do want to bring them back for sure. So we will be doing a call-in stream. But absolutely, when you have these approval numbers going up. Now, the one thing that they're still a little bit low on is the economy, and I assume it's the tariffs, or I assume it's people that are just generally upset that not a lot has been done, even though in some of these same polls, like the poll you saw from the, what was it, The Hill, or no, it was Harvard-Harris. Harvard-Harris shows Trump's approval rating down 1, but the state of the economy, they ask it as a binary, which I think is tough because I think the answer is obviously somewhere in the middle. I think there's certain metrics of the economy that are much better off than others. We're still picking up the mess from 2021, let alone 2024 or 2025 in January when Trump took over for Biden. But the way we're seeing it is like, yeah, now in that poll, it's 51% say you have a strong economy, 49% say weak. Now, I don't know what percentage of that is cognitive dissonance, people just being pushed to one side or the other, if they're talking about their personal finances, if they're just getting used to the way the economy is. I don't know exactly what that would entail, but what we do know is that if people are viewing the economy better than they ever have in 4 years, which in many metrics that's the case, you're seeing deflation of grocery prices. Last month, they went down by 0.5%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but some months under Biden, they were going up 9%, 10%, 12%, 15%, because they don't always count everything properly. Now they're going down by 0.5%. So you're seeing a little bit of a decline, and wages are going to hopefully be rising. And hopefully after the big, beautiful bill passes, they're going to rise even further, as a lot of the estimates show. So you're going to see the perception of the economy improve. So American Nerd 1776 for 2 says, thoughts on Biden getting cancer? Timing seems sus. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say anything negative about the situation. I don't want anybody to go through stage 4, 8.5 on the Gleason scale prostate cancer. It's a horrible thing. Now, the timing does seem a little suspect, because why is that being released? It's like, does it really go unnoticed? You have a president of the United States who's obviously, to anybody that can have a brain and two eyes, they can see that this person is not in good health. You know, people love to debate, oh, he was fine until the debate. Of course he wasn't if you paid attention, but they didn't. The media was in a 4-year-long gaslighting campaign. This thing was worse than Watergate. It was worse than any major scandal you can think of put together. What they did with Biden and his health, the way they were covering it up. And yeah, I mean, it begs the question, did people happen to know this? Because this isn't something that you just find out one day, usually. Usually it takes several years for a situation to become that severe once you already have it. So if you have somebody that is not in the best physical shape, it's not common sense that they wouldn't be tested for pretty much everything of that nature, especially when they get to a certain age. And you understand that a lot of people in their late 70s, early 80s develop some form of cancer. It's just something that happens with old age, and they didn't find it until now. It's a little suspect that that's the case. So did somebody know, and were they covering it up? Did Biden know? I don't know. But it is complete negligence on the part of somebody that they allowed it to get to this level, and now we're just finding out about it on a random Saturday, random Sunday in 2025. So Biden's old news. He's going to go down historically, in my opinion, even when you remove recency bias, as a bottom 10, bottom 5 president. There's really no reason for him not to. He was awful. Every single metric when he left office was worse than when he took office, you could argue. And that's with you having like a massive pandemic in 2021. You still, in mid-2021, had a relatively strong economy compared to where you're at, you know, in 2022, 2023, 2024 was a big mess. People were fed up. That's a big part of why they went back to Donald Trump and why Trump won so decisively in many different places and why Harris got millions of fewer votes compared to Biden, although there's probably several reasons for that. And you didn't have these bloated electorates that you had back in the day. So altogether, I think it's a strange situation. Obviously, it's a sad situation for anyone to get in that, you know, to be going through some sort of medical thing that Biden's going through right now. Obviously, I don't like the guy. I don't need to do this whole whitewashing his presidency thing just because he happens to be going through some medical issue. But regardless, it is strange. It's like this guy was supposedly in bad health, and he is just finding out about this now when he had presidential care for 4 years. It's a little bit strange. Rob M. Roberts for 5 says, I think Republicans need to get more voter registrations in Minnesota and New Mexico. Well, I think New Mexico, that's a yes. I think that there's a big possibility there. Minnesota, I mean, is there really room to grow in Minnesota? Because you have a great year for Republicans. Even then, Minnesota went for Kamala Harris by over 4 points. It's not a state that is likely to flip because the rural areas, they're redder in Minnesota, in much of Minnesota, than they are in a place like Wisconsin. And still, the state is overrun by the Minneapolis area. Madison and Milwaukee combined don't hold a candle to the Minneapolis area in terms of the size of population. So you have a very liberal, a very white liberal hub, a lot of millennials, a lot of other people up in Minneapolis, and the rurals are A, not red enough to counteract it, and B, not big enough to counteract it, and it's kind of a problem. So yeah, it's going to be competitive depending on how you define competitive. It can be competitive in the way that, I don't know, a state like, I don't even want to say like Iowa or Ohio anymore because they're not even competitive, but maybe like Arizona or Nevada will be competitive, but it'll be the opposite. So I think like Dem +5 in like a neutral year is probably around where you're going to see Minnesota, whereas Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania have moved to the right. But I think that we need more voter registration everywhere. I think that's how you win elections, is by having more voters that you can tap into the system and say, okay, well, this is what we need to do here. This is, we know that we're going to have 1 million more people in, let's say, Arizona. If we ever have an advantage like that, if we turn out those people, we can find those people. We know they're registered as Republicans. Some of them might be Republicans in name only. Maybe they registered for a primary and forgot to register back or whatever. But like, that's really like it. If you have a state that registers by party, you're going to be able to find these people and turn them out, which is what we need to look into in Pennsylvania, because now we're probably going to have the lead by the midterms. And I'm not saying that we're going to take down Shapiro, because he'll get the independent support and he'll get some Republicans, because a lot of voters don't know what the hell they're doing. Let's be completely honest here. But still, it could be closer. You could talk about House races. You're going to be doing better on that front. All that stuff is true. So American Nerd 1776 says, what do you think our chances are in New Jersey right now? I think they're very high. If Trump's approval rating stays like this, New Jersey is prime for the Republicans taking, because you have a candidate for governor. I'm not the biggest fan of the guy, but he's probably going to be the nominee. Whether you like the guy or not, he's probably going to be the nominee, and he has the Trump endorsement, and he almost won last time, and Phil Murphy's not popular, and the Democrat field is divided, and you have a much narrower Democrat registration edge. Like, yeah, I don't want to start using the T word just right now, toss up, but maybe I'll use the other T word, tilt. Tilt Democrat. Could that possibly be it? Maybe it could be. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. But like, it's New Jersey. I don't know if New Jersey would be ready to elect a very MAGA type of guy statewide. I would love for that to happen. Would much rather have that than the other guy. But if the other guy could just do his job, legislate, whatever, be competent enough, and he's obviously going to win the primary, yeah, I could tolerate it for 4 years or 8 years. I mean, he's going to be a hell of a lot better than the last Republican governor. He can't even fit in the state anymore. It's ridiculous. American Nerd 1776 says, I will take us winning New Jersey over Virginia. Well, you're not going to win Virginia. I'd like to win both. But Sears is just uninspiring. There's not really much to her, for one. For two, Glenn Youngkin got elected in a unique situation, and he was a special candidate. Sears is not a special candidate other than, she's Youngkin's lieutenant governor, which that doesn't always mean that you're going to be viewed in the same light. Like, what is she even running on? I haven't seen anything about her campaign. The election's going to be taking place in 5-6 months. I haven't heard a word about her campaign. Obviously, she's going to get the nomination if she doesn't already have it, because it's with a convention system. I don't even know if they did the conventions or not. But you have the convention system. She'll run, she'll lose, because Spanberger, she's got a lot of money, she's got a lot of connections, a lot of resources. She will end up winning, and then I think Youngkin will come back in 29 and win. But again, it's just a stupid system they have in Virginia. We don't have term limits for, or we don't have term limits for governor, but you can only serve one term at a time. It's like, it doesn't make sense. It's not common sense. I mean, I understand, it's good to have an election in an off year. That's like the purpose that they serve with New Jersey. And then obviously you have Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi in the other off year after the midterms take place. But I mean, yeah, you're probably going to lose it. Let's see. We'll have another water break and we'll be right back. But Tom Sav for 5 says, people shouldn't lose heart if the no tax in Social Security is not in the bill. Well, I tend to agree based on the fact that there is a deduction that they're going to put on the taxes that was not there before for $4,000. So they're going to lower the taxes. And on top of it, they're probably going to pass it in a separate bill. So to the gentleman earlier who said that he was not going to vote Republican again because of that, I think that, I understand the anger, but I would say pump the brakes a little bit on that one because of the fact that there's a lot to it. I understand Congress is complicated. I don't like the fact that it's that complicated. I don't think it needs to be that complicated, but there's like so many rules in place that safeguard how complicated it is. It's funny because they call Trump a dictator. If Donald Trump was actually a dictator, he would have all of his agenda done by now, and his approval rating would be like 85%. Like, if we're going to be completely honest here, if Donald Trump was a dictator, the leaders that can wield as much power as they can always have high approval ratings. And sometimes it's through unethical means. But even if it wasn't, even if he just went out there and enacted all of his campaign promises with a magic wand, essentially, or at least got done what he intended to get done via a magic wand, you would have his approval rating at least be in the 60s. Even people that don't like him will say, oh, well, look what he did. Oh, he got it done. He's an effective leader. Because a lot of people want an effective leader, even more so than a leader at times that they'll actually agree with. They want things to get done. They will take improvements, even if it means not getting every single thing they want. Like, I don't think we're going to get every single thing that Trump promised on the campaign trail. But the fact that he's trying and actually going out there and doing what he can do, like even the things that Biden proposed that I didn't necessarily agree with, he was a bad president because he couldn't even get those things done. When it came down to things like, lower the age of Medicare to 60, he couldn't even get that done. So all of the bones he threw to people on the campaign trail didn't even try to really get any of that done. But Donald Trump, he will go balls to the wall and call out Republicans that even his own base likes because of the fact that they're standing in the way of him passing his agenda. That's what endears him to a lot of people. And so many people in the political class don't get it. They misrepresent him. They misrepresent his supporters. They misrepresent his movement for one nefarious reason or another. Sometimes it is just out of ignorance. And regardless, it boils down to ignorance because they just don't get it. They just don't get it. So American Nerd 1776, his thoughts on Johnson as speaker with Trump in the White House. Well, this is a good test for him because I think the answer to your question lies at the feet of can they get this done or not, because this is a landmark piece of legislation. I mean, they've signed several bills. I mean, you have the Laken Riley Act. You have the, obviously, the No Tax on Tips Act. That was, I think, introduced in the Senate. So that might be kicked around back and forth a little bit before it goes to Trump's desk. But this is like everything right here. And if he's able to get this done, whether perfect or imperfect, that's absolutely huge. It would be absolutely huge. Hopefully he can. Because Trump's agenda really just rests on, extending the tax cuts. It's a big part of it. Because a lot of people, the things that we talk about, don't directly implicate people's lives. So when it comes down to I had to pay thousands more in taxes because the House Republicans couldn't do their job, yeah, nobody's going to show up and vote for them. They will lose as many seats as they can. And maybe that's not going to be a ridiculous amount compared to how you would usually think of it, because Republicans in red states got their act together after 2018. Because that's what it came down to. The left, you saw what they were doing in New York, Connecticut, Illinois, California, Maryland, all these gerrymandered maps. And they always say Republicans have been the ones gerrymandering, but then you're leaving seats open in Utah and Kansas and Oklahoma for Democrats to pick off in a wave year. Now that's completely changed, and now Republicans have at least kind of fought back a little bit. There's more room to grow on that front for sure. You have the DEI districts in Alabama, Louisiana. Those need to be looked into. It's unconstitutional. You don't get that call the other way in white minority states like New Mexico. They don't draw a white district, even though that would vote Republican, because for some reason white people have to be the doormat of America. But regardless, it is what it is, and we have gotten more victories on redistricting over the past 5 years than I think we've gotten in a while, and that's a good thing. So we will see, but they've grown a little bit of a brain when it comes to redistricting, and that's important, because if you understand that, this district is moving left, but it was solidly Republican in 2010, well, now in a place like Oklahoma, what are they going to do? They're going to go out there and say, let's draw it differently so we don't have any blue trending places. So stuff like that has allowed Republicans to compete. I think 2026, anyone talking about a blue wave, I want to know where they're getting their drugs from, for one, if they're actually looking at the maps. And for two, I would like for them to explain to me what the pathway is for Democrats to get to 230 seats. 235, 230, somewhere in that range. I'm waiting for the pathway. I just don't see it. If anything, I could think of a situation where Trump's approval rating is like 53, 54, and Republicans could win more seats in the House. Maybe not a ridiculous amount, but I'm saying could they get up to like 226, 227? That'd be huge if they were able to. Two of those could come in redistricting. I think there's several sleeper flips on the map, but it's early. It really is. So Rob M. Roberts is crazy how Trump almost won Virginia last election. Well, it is crazy to think about, but is it the craziest thing in the world? It definitely got a little bit redder. I think a lot of that came from minority voters in Nova. There's a big Muslim population in Nova as well. Definitely Democrats collapsing with Muslims didn't help. And now you look at Trump's approach to the Middle East. It's very nuanced. It's very nuanced. People on both sides are not happy about it as a result, but it's like Trump wants the wars to end. He wants peace through strength. That's what's important. He doesn't want to see dead people on either side of any conflict. He wants the wars to end. He wants the Abraham Accords expanded. He wants people to get along. He wants to get along with these Gulf states. They're shady people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not the biggest fan of Qatar and the UAE, but it is pretty cool that they lit up the tallest building in the world with the American flag for Donald Trump when he was visiting. I mean, that's incredible, not just for Trump, but for the fact that you had the largest building in the world, soon to be in Oklahoma, by the way. I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but the largest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa, or however you pronounce it, was lit up in red, white, and blue in the American flag, which is pretty awesome. So we'll see. But the fact is, he's going out there, he's making deals, he's getting them done. He wants people to stop dying. He doesn't want to get into this conflict with Iran. We don't want a conflict with Iran. We don't want war with Iran. War with Iran means we're going to be in another Iraq situation. We're going to be fighting wars that are not directly for our best interests over the possibility that they have a weapon of mass destruction. It's so familiar. The playbook, it's eerily similar to what we saw with the Iraq invasion, because it's like, oh, they have weapons of mass destruction. Oh, they have nukes. We don't want them to have nukes, but there's ways to go about it that don't involve us sending people to die. And then, it's like, yeah, sanctions is one thing. They usually lead to de-escalation, not war under Trump, by the way. That's a whole nother thing, because Trump is unpredictable. So you need a leader like that. We need somebody like Trump. Hopefully he can mold Vance into that guy. Obviously Vance is his own person. But if he's able to go on the world stage with Trump, understand, it's why you have him in the meeting with Zelensky, understand that you got to do what you got to do to negotiate, get things done. That's going to be important moving forward. It absolutely will be, because Trump's leadership skills, they're winning. He wins with them on the world stage. He did it in term one. He's already doing it in term two. But it is true that when he's gone, you understand you got to have similar leadership or the whole world's in chaos. And it might be one of the reasons why he's also propping up Rubio a lot too. When he's asked about 2028, he'll mention Vance. He'll also mention Rubio. It's because I think Trump sees Rubio kind of, I don't know if it's like mimicking Trump, because Rubio's the guy who goes, he blows the way the wind does. And that's not always a bad thing. But it is definitely a little risky. Why people would see it as risky to hand over the keys to your movement to somebody like that, somebody who 12 years ago was open to some sort of like DACA amnesty. But regardless, he has changed a lot. He's improved a lot. And especially even on the foreign policy front, I thought he'd be a little bit iffy on it. He's come into his own. A+. I gave him I think I put him in the B tier when he was first picked, even though I liked the pick. Now it's like he's high risk, high reward. He's becoming high reward. So maybe Trump also props him up because he sees that like edge to him that maybe he's not sure that Vance has. I don't know. I'm not here to start a 2028 beef. I think that the ticket's going to be Vance Rubio, whether people like it or not. And I think it's a winning ticket. But I think that there's a reason why Trump will kind of prop up both sides of that when he's asked the question about his successor. Maybe Vance might not even run. I don't know. He probably will, but you never know. But now the super chats are rolling in. Jacob Hawley for 20 says, oh my God, he actually did it. My mom works in the food service industry, and this is amazing for her and her staff. I want to swear, I want to cry. This is huge. Over 25,000 deduction. Epic. What a win. Promises made and kept. So true. And that's huge. So you have this going on. You have no taxes on tips. Probably in a separate bill, you could get that no taxes on Social Security. But if he's able to get that through, I mean, that was something you talked about on the campaign trail. And for him to pass that through unanimously, I mean, you know he's going to bring that up at the next State of the Union come 2026. I mean, it is a big victory for him policy-wise because people wanted it, and he got it done. Hamster Eater 96 says, Congressman Issa has taken the lead on forcing California to count their votes on Election Day. This last year, late votes caused 5 Republicans to lose. Yeah, well, hopefully they can get it done. And I agree. I mean, it's like, how do you have this happen? And almost every race, not every, but like 80% of the time, the Democrat wins in these close competitive races when they do this. It's ridiculous, and it needs to stop. And it's like, you don't like understand how you have these countries that are third world, and they'll count them very quickly. But then you have California. It's supposed to be like, oh, they say the 4th largest economy in the world. All the Californians like to hype themselves up, but in reality, look at their election system. Why does it take a month in these places? I'm not saying all the votes are fake. I'm saying it opens the door for that. It opens the door for shady ballots to find a way in that should have no business being in. And at that point, you're talking about House seats that could be costed. Republicans very well could have 223, 224 right now if they actually had a decent election system in California, which they don't have. So hopefully that gets fixed, and hopefully we can bring a mini red wave to California, at least in the governor's election, because you have probably, maybe not probably, but possibly, it's either going to be one of 2 bad candidates, Katie Porter, who's awful, or Kamala Harris, who's awful. It'd be better if Kamala doesn't run for governor, so she could run for president and lose again, which would be pretty funny, because the Democrats are seemingly open to her running now, which they weren't before. So I don't know who's going to be their nominee. You did have Wes Moore in Maryland, who's another possible contender. You know, he said he's not looking to run. Doesn't mean he's not going to. We saw this with plenty of people in 2020 and 2024. But you have this guy who's now rejecting a reparations bill. So maybe he's angling for running. Now you could say, well, he comes off now, he's like the moderate in their view now. Yeah, but he'll still do well in the South. He could still be like that last Democrat to be a somewhat strong candidate. I'm not saying that I'm like afraid of the guy, but he's probably better because they can, if they actually wanted to be competent, they could take him and mold him into a moderate because he doesn't have as much baggage. Not saying he doesn't have any, but he doesn't have as much. So it's going to be something to watch. He comes off as very generic. They kind of go down that road again. Will they actually? I don't know. But if it's him and AOC, I think that he probably wins the primary because AOC is going to take up the Bernie mantle, which again, we learned was not big enough in 2020 when you didn't have him on a 1v1 with Hillary. So if that's the Democrats' goal, the far left's goal to bank on age demographics changing and boomers dying out over the past 4-8 years to get their far left candidate in there in the primary, it's not quite there yet. It's really not. So they're going to find that out the hard way, but we'll see. We'll see. Rob Roberts says, I live in Delco, Pennsylvania. Shapiro needs to go. Well, I agree. But is he going to go when he's super popular? Approval rating in the 50s? It's a little tough. Now, if you run a strong candidate, you could give him a run for his money and significantly weaken his case for 2028. If he only wins by 4 after winning by 14 4 years prior, that's a bad omen in a lot of people's eyes. And they're not going to view him as a strong candidate, which he's really not. I think he's very weak. He's very weak. XJ Cherokee Bear says Comey's a PDF file. Well, I'm not making those allegations, but he's a weird dude. He's a weird dude. That seashell post was strange. I'm not going to say, like, you could say, well, technically it was just a political statement. Yeah, it's true. People like Jack Posobiec said 86-46 for Biden. The left will never let you forget that. But it is true that 86 does not necessarily mean physically redact. But the fact that he instantly deleted it and apologized for it kind of led me to believe that there was some sort of guilt in that. So very strange, very tone deaf for Trump, because Trump just survived an assassination, which I'm sure the intelligence agency had zero to do with at all. Zero. Had absolutely no intel. I'm sure the guy totally just acted alone, by the way. Totally just acted alone. Yeah. When are we going to get to the bottom of that? That's a whole nother thing. I care far more about that than I care about JFK, the JFK files, the Epstein stuff. It'd be interesting to know the Epstein stuff. I would just rather hear about what happened that day, because this is the most relevant to current politics type of thing that we could get our hands on. What are they doing? You're telling me that this guy acted fully alone? Really? He's able to get onto that rooftop all by himself? I mean, it's a strange situation. It's a very strange situation how they let somebody get that close. And that guy happens to be in like a BlackRock video. He happens to be somebody with like a past on the internet that is kind of meant to spark political debate. Oh, was he like a Republican, or oh, was he a Democrat? Strange situation. Kind of leads me to believe that he did not act alone. And I think most people would look at that and say he didn't act alone. But I would much rather get to the bottom of that than get to the bottom of, oh, here's what happened in this thing 60, 70 years ago. I'm not saying we can't get to the bottom of the JFK. There's people that have dedicated their lives to getting to the bottom of the JFK stuff. But this, I think, is more important, at least for our generation. We didn't see a president, I guess you would say, suffer an assassination attempt until Trump. You'd have to go all the way back to Reagan, like a serious one. You know, Trump was shot, injured, not much, thankfully, but how close it was to death was insane. Reagan obviously was shot in the 80s. That would have been like 40 years prior. American Nerd 7076 is, in your opinion, should Trump recognize Palestine? No, I don't believe he should recognize Palestine. He might threaten to do so because, yeah, I think that Trump does need to be tough with Netanyahu, just like he needs to be tough with every single other world leader. And if Netanyahu wants to bait Trump into being entangled in potential conflicts between Israel and Iran, more so, instead of trying to de-escalate them, it's a problem. And if Trump wants to use that as leverage, then he could use it as leverage. But no, I don't think he wants to. I don't think he needs to. I just don't understand why Egypt can't just take Gaza. I don't understand why there can't be some deal that's made out. Israel's agreed to two-state solutions in the past. I really don't understand why Palestine didn't take them. If they did, you probably wouldn't have this conflict ongoing, but they've decided not to take them, and they're reaping what they sow. So it's, I mean, the ball's been in their court many times, but with Trump, yeah, it's like, you know, he could float it. If he floats it to at least get something for negotiation purposes, ending the war, he'll, you know, obviously gain support foreign policy-wise probably overall. Doesn't mean he's going to do it, but floating the idea as a negotiation tactic, if he feels the need to, I think it's important because, yeah, Israel also has to come to the table. They're not perfect. No other country's perfect. It doesn't mean they can't defend themselves from Hamas in Gaza. They absolutely should be. I'm not going to be one of these people that's going to simp for these terrorists. I'm not going to be one of these people that tries to say any act of war is some sort of genocide because people might be dying. It's like they need to just chill out. But the main takeaway is, yeah, I mean, you don't want this ongoing war. You want peace in the region. I mean, we were getting so close to peace under the previous, or I guess you would say the previous Trump term, but the previous president just threw that in the shredder, and now we're trying to get back to that. So whatever helps us move the ball down the field on that is something I support. LinRx52 for 10 says, on Social Security, the 4,000 is an extra deduction on top of the usual one. I believe they're also raising the threshold before which taxation begins quite a bit, Both of those are huge. True. Thanks for the 10. American Nerd 1776 says Rubio would crush his opponent in the 2028 VP debate. Yeah, he's a good debater. I think a lot of people look at the whole Chris Christie gaffe, the whole robot thing, and say that, oh, this can be used to discredit why he's not a good debater. Being a good debater doesn't win you elections, but being a bad debater doesn't usually either, unless it's Biden 2024 level bad. But yeah, I mean, it's like he would do fine. He would do well against pretty much anybody, I feel like, on the debate stage. Rob M. Roberts says, I think Rubio would be the successor. Well, he's got to keep doing what he's doing. He's done a great job. He was eviscerating these people today. Tim Kaine says, why do you want how dare you want the South African migrants, but you don't want the other ones? And then Rubio's like, well, why do you seem to have a problem with them? Seems like we know why. And it's because they happen to be white and not some other group that they can deem as marginalized, even though they're actually in reality marginalized. I hate using terms like that, but I mean, these are people that are fleeing persecution because you have this lunatic Malema in South Africa that chants things like kill the Boer and says how he wants to radically redistribute the wealth because, I don't know, skill issue or something. But it is what, it's just one... It's just a disaster. We'll leave it at that. American Nerd 1776 is, why not just split California into smaller states, because then they get more senators. That was a Democrat proposal they tried to put on the 2018 midterms as a referendum. It didn't get enough signatures, but that's not something that we'd want. Although now it might be different, because if you broke it up into 3, you might get one of those voting Republican, but you wouldn't have been able to really foresee that back then. American Nerd 1776 is Barron Trump Rep 2040. Let's effing go. Well, I don't think he would be old enough. So I'm eligible in 2036. I think he would have to wait until 2044. So we'll see. We'll wait. Probably not. Probably not going to run, but you never know. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. Rob M. Roberts says Thomas Massie is nothing but a grandstander. He has basically proven himself to be just that. I mean, I want to like the guy. He tends to, talk sense here and there. But then at the end of the day, it's like if you need the guy for anything, he chooses not to come through for the dumbest reason. And he endorses DeSantis over Trump. And he promotes people writing his name in over Trump. It's strange to me. It's very strange behavior from a very strange individual, for sure. But it's like, I can see why Trump doesn't want him in Congress. Like the people that'll throw a moral panic about primarying the guy, it's like you can't make the perfect the enemy of the good 24/7 and expect return. Because in turn, you may have good reasons for what you're doing, but you are in action doing the same thing that any other Democrat is doing, except you claim to be holding the mantle of the furthest right echelons of Congress. And it's like, you're not. You're not. People like Andy Biggs are a little bit different because they understand how to play ball. Paul Gosar understands how to play ball. Thomas Massie is just throwing the ball in the bottom of the ocean and just, I don't even know what he's doing. But he's not playing ball properly. He is throwing the ball in the garbage can, and he's not going to want to get it out. It's strange behavior. So he's got to definitely fall in line, or he might face a primary if he keeps this up. It's not necessarily just because of Trump wanting him to be primaried, but also because voters, they see this stuff. There's plenty of times when Trump does something or says something, and people are like, I like Trump, but I don't really think that was very cool, what he did. But then over time, it's like a few months later, oh, well, maybe you realize that Donald Trump was actually onto something. And I feel like there's a lot of people in that camp with people like Massie. Of course, you're going to have many people who will just be like, I have to be contrarian 24 hours a day, and I can't support anything Trump does, and I have to always be contrarian because, I don't know, I'm a chronic doomer, or I just have very high standards. And it's like, it's okay to have high standards, but there's a reality here. It's like you're not going to be able to get every single thing you want when you don't have a Congress that is like in lockstep with every single other member on literally everything. It's like it's a give and take in politics. It's not perfect, but this notion of, we can't vote because we're not getting everything we want, even though we get 95% of what we want. It's like if you're a single issue voter, that's one thing, but how do you even become a single issue voter for the debt? You must be very miserable at that point. You must be a strange person. I honestly have never met a person like that in my life who only cares about the debt, which I care about the debt. I would like it to be zero. I would like it to go down. I think that we're going to have a much better shot of that with Trump than with any other Democrat that has spent a ridiculous amount of money. So all of that is true. We would like to see at least us have like a balance, start to reverse the debt to GDP ratio, something of that nature. We're always probably going to have debt. Almost every country has debt. So at least with Trump, you have things like the sovereign wealth fund that he wants to create and the external revenue service and things that he's thinking outside of the box to want to like pay down debt. Maybe we'll get asteroid mining in our lifetimes and mine it for minerals and beat everybody else to that and then sell those to pay off the debt. Like there's so many things that we could do on that front. I don't mind kicking the can down the road if technology is going to improve to the point where we're going to be able to find a way out of it. But these people don't want to think outside of the box because they're lazy and they're just grifting. Rob Roberts says we need to primary Joni Ernst out. We'll find a candidate that can do it. I wouldn't mind it. I'd rather primary her out than like Tillis, because Tillis is, and I don't like Tillis that much, but he's in a very close state. You can't primary out Collins. She's untouchable because of the state that she's in. But Ernst, Ernst, I think you could primary. I just don't know who you would do it with. I'd rather get Bill Cassidy. I'd rather get John Cornyn. I think both of them are very beatable. But Ernst, I just don't know who would go for it. But let's see. American Nerd 1776 for 10. Oh, by the way, we hit our goal. Says, would you support packing the court if we get our people there? I used to be opposed to the idea, but now with useless justices like ACB and Kavanaugh, I think we need to do it before it's too late. I think threatening to pack the court is a very interesting proposal. It'd be funny watching the left squirm about it, and maybe some of these Supreme Court justices would be forced to fall in line, because we all know they're political. They say they're not political. They listen. They understand what's going on in the political cycle. These are not stupid people. They're Supreme Court justices. But they vote stupidly for one reason or another, because some of them are possibly controlled opposition. My problem is, how do you pack the court with people like Thomas and Alito? It's funny because if they happen to retire under Trump's watch, who is Trump going to replace them with? There's a few leading candidates that have critiqued the rest of the court. People like, forgot the guy's name, he's James. He's like the Asian guy, very intelligent, Supreme Court contender. He possibly could go on the court. There's several other people. That one woman, Rushing, that Trump was thinking about putting up there, very conservative. He went with ACB, who I said would be underwhelming and was overhyped, overrated. I was right. They were wrong. There were plenty of other options to go with. He chose her. That was a DEI pick, by the way. I'll call balls and strikes. If you go out there and you say, I have to put a woman on the court, that's DEI. Trump engaged in it. And it turned out to yield a weak candidate when he could have had a much better candidate. Although there were better women, for the record. He picked the wrong one. I think he knows that by now. And it's like you have all these people like Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh was the victim of a witch hunt. I don't know how you would come out of something like that and not like make Clarence Thomas look like Ruth Bader Ginsburg in comparison. But instead, he just turned out to be a total flop. ACB is a total flop. Gorsuch is, I guess, the best of the three, but I would say he's a little bit of a tier below Thomas and Alito, so not really a big fan of that. But Base Cat with a member chat saying, you see that MTG went on TYT? I did not see that. Speaking of, even Shank was commending Trump and keeping his promises on his popular agenda, something Bernie can't do. Well, Bernie's just too far left. A lot of people who are like populist in this country are common sense conservatives on the social front and the economic front. That's why left-wing populism is not going to win. I think most people would approve of some sort of free healthcare if it actually worked. I think most people would not care too much if that we had like a higher tax on those income brackets in the millions or the billions or whatever. Obviously, you don't want it to be too high, but could we add like an income bracket for like a 40% tax on that income the way we had as like the regular highest income bracket under Obama? Yeah, it's still a progressive tax structure, doesn't impact a majority of taxpayers. But I mean, there's a problem with it because you could have businesses leave. So it's one of those things where you have to toe the line. But Bernie's policies are not really super popular. And then you get to the crime policies and the social policy. That's just pure on wokeness. I mean, he was even more liberal than Biden, at least in the 2020 campaign on that front. Even among Democrat primary voters, they were viewing Bernie Sanders' proposals as too liberal in many places, and that is not something that helps your electability. So I tell these people, you're not going to get any left-wing populist reforms if you're actually serious about them. But it's interesting, all these like left-wing populists, none of them have done anything except for shill for Big Pharma when it comes to the vaccine, shill for big business when it came to the lockdowns. I mean, these are the same people that supported the lockdowns, which were proven to not be as effective as people initially thought and caused the largest transfer of wealth in American history. But these far left populist types were in lockstep with that. They supported it 100%. So all it is just gay race communism for them. That's all their ideology really is. You know, maybe Bernie in 2016 did kind of leaned away from that because I guess he was trying to appeal more sane. But either way, or Trump winning just broke him and he went back to being complete insane. But he's always been insane. The same guy has praised communist dictatorships. He's praised all sorts of crazy things throughout history. He's not like a social moderate by any means just because he happens to technically oppose open borders as he'll deem it a Koch brothers policy, which it is in part, but still, it's like doesn't mean that he's good on immigration. It is strange, though, to see him on the right side of the H-1B debate. But I don't know, he might have just been trying to one-up Elon more so than he actually cares about principle or whatever. You know, Donald Trump, this year alone, they've taken in, I think, they're only pledging 1/6 of the H-1Bs they had in the final year of Biden. Obviously, I think that's still too much, but I mean, it's much better than it was before. So people were panicking that he was just going to explode the H-1B visa cap. In turn, he's taking in fewer. So we could look in regular chat because it is true that we are done with the super chats. We've been live for an hour and 20 minutes. Let's see. Haas says everyone thinks running the government is like playing with action figures. It would be cool if I could do this, then this, then this. Yeah, I mean, it's not how it works. I think it would be cool if you could get everything done that quickly. And the power of the presidency is real. I mean, it is there. And on the world stage, I mean, it's if you could have one of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, people that say the House or people that would say the Senate, they're fooling themselves. You would much rather have the presidency. You would much rather have the presidency. So, let's see. As someone in tech, I would wish Trump was harder on H-1Bs and OPT and require H-1Bs to be a high minimum salary. Yeah, they shouldn't be getting the same benefits either. They shouldn't be getting overtime. They shouldn't be getting, I mean, like, you have to put American citizens first above these people. I don't understand what we've been doing as a country. It's like, oh, well, it's technically equal under law. It's like these people are not our people. I mean, they're here as guest workers. They're going to have to abide by different rules. If you're a guest in my house, you're not going to be able to use my bathroom without asking me. It's the same concept. Like, let's not be dumb for once. Let's actually get our act together here and let's win as a nation. We are a country. We're a people. We are. The American people are a people. And we select people on our terms, not their terms. We're not some economic zone that is to be exploited. That's not what America means. It's what America means to a lot of these people. That's not what America means to me. And that's not what America means to a majority of Americans either, or it shouldn't be. The fact that it's kind of become that, it's kind of a little bit of a problem. So what are my thoughts on John? Oh, that's the troll guy. That's the troll guy. Yeah, we haven't, I don't know if it's because I was going live too late, but we didn't have a lot of the regulars in tonight. So next time we're going to go live quite a bit earlier. I was intending to go live a bit earlier, but we'll go live early on Sunday, probably like 9 Eastern. I think 9 Eastern would be a good time. Maybe a little bit later than that because the sun probably still out, but for lighting purposes, we'll wait until like 9:30. Rob M says, I think Trump should introduce an infrastructure plan. It would be very popular with everybody. Well, it's a lot of spending. I think that he needs to find a way to tweak the previous infrastructure bill that was passed under Biden and make sure that you can get rid of the pork in that bill if possible, or at least try to phase it out, find a way. But yeah, we do need to find a way to invest in infrastructure, whether it's by having private companies do it so we don't drive up the debt. Like, there has to be some sort of a way to do it. Let's see. Where would the money come? It's a good question. But that's the thing. Like, infrastructure, is that a priority this year? I don't think it's a priority this year. We'll have to see. Screw salt. Well, if you screw salt, you screw New Jersey over. And like, it doesn't have to be full salt, but there has to be some reduction just because Trump promised it and he's going to want to deliver it because he wanted to make a play in New York and New Jersey and California and all these states. These states should just lower their taxes. Like, they would be that simple. Lower their state taxes. Cut their bloated state DEI programs, and you'll actually start to see some sort of improvement. So I forgot to unmute the microphone. But somebody was talking about the no tax on Social Security, but that can't physically go in this bill because of some rule that's been around for a while. So if, you're going to have a deduction that would still kind of count, but they very well could pass a standalone bill, but they can't pass the bill the way people kind of think of it as. So, I guess we want to improve. If New Jersey elects a Republican governor that can lower the taxes of New Jersey, the SALT deduction would essentially go down to begin with because you can only use a SALT deduction on states with like really high taxes. So that's that. But something has to be done. Either way, I think that the bill as it stands is solid enough. to the point where I think the people fighting over the percentage of salt or whatever, or trying to raise it, or whining about spending, and we know we're just going to spend anyways in some way, shape, or form. I just think that they're wasting their time. I just want to extend the tax cut. Everything else is kind of secondary to that, because you have to stimulate the economy a little bit more than we've been doing for a while. But if Trump wanted to win more people over, he'd put no tax on video games, no tax on buying a home if you're a first-time home buyer. Well, video games, I mean, like, they're not an essential item. Who cares if there's a tax on video games? Like, we're not trying to win over the gamer demographic any more than we already have. But the no tax on first-time home buyers, I mean, it's interesting. But that's a lot of money, like a lot of property taxes. It would depend on how much it would cost. No tax on super chats. Well, technically like the way it's done is like it would, like the no tax on tips thing it could impact super chats, but not by as much as people think. Because usually you just get a portion withheld from royalties in general. But no tax on royalties would help out creators quite a bit. Southern Missouri says, I know a lot of union and blue-collar workers who voted for Trump via no tax on overtime needs to happen by the midterms. Isn't that in this bill? That might be in this bill. Let me see. We'll ask Grok. Yes, it does. It does, absolutely. So that's good. So, I mean, I know people that were very, very intrigued by the no tax on overtime policy, and that's why they voted for Trump too. So, we'll see. We'll see. But it is in the bill. So, we will wrap things up. It's been a good show. It's good to be back. A little bit of a chill vibe stream, but we will be back on Sunday for sure with a call-in stream. So if you guys want to call into that, which you can join the Discord server at redeaglepolitics.com. It's $5 a month, 16 cents a day, and you can join the community at a much higher level than just the YouTube chat. The YouTube chat's only for the live streams. The Discord chat, that's like 24 hours a day for some people. But anyways, guys, before we wrap things up, like the stream down below, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video or stream. And I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle out.